Hello and welcome back. This is Matthew, and today I am going to go over the steps to add a new output class to your MVS system. And that will correspond with a new printer in Hercules so that you can have a dedicated output class and virtual printer to send your jobs up to the virtual 1403 PDF generation service. So for some reason, YouTube just deletes a bunch of comments that were made on the previous video where I was talking about the new virtual 1403 service. I have no idea why YouTube's deleting the comments, but I do see them before they disappear. And a lot of you asked, how do I set up a dedicated output class so that I can just send certain jobs up to the service? And that's how I run it personally. So I definitely understand the desire to do that. When we announced the service, Moshix and I decided that the easiest way for people to get up and running was just to change the Hercules device config. So then they can just keep on using their system as is with the fewest number of steps to get up and running. But for those of you who really want to use the service and write jobs in your system and use this over the long term, you may not want all of your system's output, all of the automated output, the startup and shutdown output in the turnkey system. You may not want all of that going up through the website and emailing it to you and all of that, right? You want to leave that as your class A output, and you want a new dedicated output class that you can use to select for jobs to go up through the service. So that's what we're going to do today. Before we dive into that, I do just want to show one new feature of the web service, which is the PDFs are now held on the server for 7 days. So instead of printing and emailing you the jobs, and then you just having to get the email and keep the email, you can also come up to the web server, log in with your account, and you can see the PDFs that you've printed that way. And if you want, you can also turn off email delivery. So if I disable email job delivery, when I print PDFs to my account, of course, I've created an access key just for the purposes of this video. This will no longer be active by the time this goes live. If I print now, the system will not email me anything, so it won't clog up my email inbox. I'll just be able to come online here, log in, see my job list. If you have more jobs in the last 7 days that you want to get PDFs for, we have a new bigger job list screen. So this will list more than just I think we just list 10 here. But you can go in, you can see all of your jobs, you can grab the PDFs, and you can just do all of that online. The other thing is that the URL for this job is shareable. So we generate a sort of unique encrypted ID for each PDF. So if you want to have someone else look at your job output, maybe they're working with you on troubleshooting your code, troubleshooting your JCL, whatever the case may be, you can just email them the link to your PDF, and they will be able to view that without having to log in, without having to have a virtual 1403 account. Again, the only thing to be aware of is that right now we have the server configured to keep the PDFs for 7 days. So if you're collaborating with someone, you're working on an active project, you're probably going back and forth, they can go ahead and check that out. It's not a problem. If you do want to keep that output for more than 7 days, you'll want to either download it or again, just have those emailed to you, and you can keep them long-term that way. But that's the new feature that we just added. So I hope that's helpful and lets you sort of choose how you want to manage, whether you're more of an email-centered user or a web application-centered user. All right, into today's task at hand. So I'm going to do this twice. If you are a turnkey, the TK4- system user, I'm going to show you how to set up the new printer output class using TK4-. And then in the second half of the video, I'm going to do it again, but we're going to do it on a system that was built using J. Moseley's MVS 3.8 installation instructions. So I'm going to put the timestamp for that down in the description, and maybe I'll even be really fancy and use a video editor software and put the timestamp right here in the video. But if you are a Moseley Sysgen user or the new MVS Community Edition, which is the automated installation method of that's been worked on by some of the folks in the mainframe community Discord, you can go ahead and skip to the second half of the video and I will see you there. If you are a turnkey system user, stick around and let's go ahead and set that up right now. So if I go to the terminal here, I'm just going to start from complete scratch. I've downloaded the turnkey TK4- distribution. I'm going to make a directory here to unzip it in. And we'll go ahead and unzip downloads TK4 current. And there we go. So the first thing we always want to do is enable console mode. So that's set console mode. And this will let us actually see and access the MVS console through the integrated Hercules console device. And because we haven't started up the system or anything yet, let's go ahead and add our printer to Hercules. So you can see here we have a conf directory for configuration files, but then we also have a local conf directory. And reading the TK4- documentation, we are supposed to make any user changes to these 10 local configuration files. So I'm going to just put my changes in file 01. I can say this is reserved for future use. It's basically just an empty file. These will all be included in the TK4- master configuration file. So we need to know the Hercules configuration syntax here, but it's pretty simple, luckily. The first part of the config line is the device address of the device that we want to add. So I've looked at the TK4- IOGen configuration, and there is an available 1403 device at address 20E. So that's what I'm going to use for my new printer. The printer is going to live at device 20E. The next is the device type. That's a 1403 printer. And so in Hercules, that's just 1403. And then for printers, you can either have them print to a file on the local system, or they can listen on a network socket. We want to listen on a network socket because that's how the virtual 1403 agent connects to the Hercules printer. So you can give it a interface to listen on and a port number to listen on. So localhost colon 1403 will listen on the localhost interface on port 1403. If you just want to listen on all network interfaces, you can just give it a port number. And so that's what I'm going to do in case I want to run the agent on a different system. But whatever works for you is fine. And that needs to be a socket device. So my complete config line here is device at address 20E is going to be a 1403 printer. It's going to listen on network port 1403. There's no relationship between this 1403 and this 1403. I think it just makes sense that if I only have one 1403 socket device, I may as well listen on network port 1403. And then we tell it that it wants to be a socket device. So 20E 1403 1403 socdev. So let's write that file. We can see that that file now just has this one device in it. We'll go back up to the TK4 directory and we will start MVS. Okay, so TK4 starts, or it takes a minute or two to start up. So we will let it do its thing here. If I switch over to another console window here, we can connect our 3270 client to it. So that is localhost port 3270. And then as soon as VTAM starts over in TK4, we'll get the login screen in this 3270 terminal. So we can watch TK4 start up. It's exciting stuff. Okay. So it has started up enough for VTAM to start. So let's go ahead and log on. So it's log on and what's the user for TK4? I think it's Herc01. Yep. And then the default password, CUL, the letter 8, Sorry, the number 8 and the letters TR. See you later. There we go. Okay, great. So our new TK4- system is up and running. And to create our output class, we need to edit the JES2 parameters. So we'll go ahead and use RFE, and 3.4 will let us browse data sets. And the JES2 parameters are in the dataset sys1.jes2parm for JES2 parameters. And that is the correct data set, sys1.jes2parm. So we'll edit that. And then we'll edit the member jes2parm. Okay, here's all of our JES2 initialization parameters. So let's go down to, we hit F8 to scroll down. And the first line I'm looking for is the number of printers. So the maximum number of local printers is currently set at 3. We're going to be adding a 4th printer. So let's change that to 4. And then if we keep going down, okay, so one more page down, we can see our printer definitions. There's 3 printers at addresses 00E, 00F, and 002. And those are our class A, Z, and X printers. We want to copy printer 1 and make a new printer 4 using the same configuration, but we'll change the class and we'll change the unit. So I just want to copy these 2 lines. So I can do a block copy in RFE by doing CC on the first line I want to copy and CC on the last line I want to copy. And then I can go down and say I want it either above or below another line, or after or before, which is how the commands are named. So if I say I want this to be copied before this line, then it'll make a copy of these 2 lines that I've put the CC block on, and it will paste them before this line. So there we go. We have our new lines. Let's make this printer 4. I'm going to pick a new output class. I'm going to call it output class E. And then I'll remember that as my email output class because I'll have Virtual 1403 email me those jobs. And the unit is going to match up with that unit number that we used for adding the 1403 printer to Hercules. So again, you can't just pick arbitrary unit addresses. They need to be addresses that your system IOGen had configured. And again, for TK4-, there is an unused 1403 address at 20E. And in fact, the 1403s are generated in TK4- at 00E and F, 10E and F, 20E and F, and 30E and F. And then just be aware that the 00E and F are already used up here. And I believe the 30E is already used by, I think it's used for the MVS hard copy log. So if you only need one more, just go ahead and use 20E for your printer 4, and that should work. It shouldn't conflict with anything that's already in use. Okay, let's keep scrolling down in this file. So I'll just hit F8 until I see the output class definitions. I missed them. Oh, here they are. Okay, so sysout class specifications. So TK4 predefines every output class, all of the letters, and then 0 through 9 as the numbers. So a few of them are being used for particular purposes. The A is our standard printer output. B is our standard punch output. It looks like it's using G for a special purpose. L for syslog. The held output class, well, I guess any letter that they're not using for something else is the held output class. I think H is typically used in a lot of the TK4 jobs for held output. But in any case, output class E here does not appear to be in use by any special purpose. So we are going to change it into another printer output class And the E corresponds to that output class we picked for the new printer we added, printer 4. So I'm just going to make it look like the existing printer A. So it's print sys no hold. So this will automatically print to the printer, and then TRK CEL. And we can put a comment here that this is going to be the virtual 1403 output class. Okay, so that's everything we need to do. Let's go back to the top of the file and review that. We set the maximum number of printers to 4 because we're adding a 4th printer. We added the 4th printer, so we copied the 2 lines from printer 1 and pasted them down here, and they're now printer 4, class E, and our unit address is 20E. This continuation character in the last column here is important. That's what lets it continue to use more parameters on the next line. So again, if you just copied using CC and then before this line, it'll copy over in the correct position. But again, if you just want to verify that this line looks correct, it should look just like printer 1, except it's class E and it's unit 20E. Then if we scroll down a couple more pages, the last thing we did was change the output class specifications. We changed E to match A. So it looks just like our existing A printer. It's print, sysout, no hold, and TRK CEL. And then we can put a comment there. So if somebody else is looking at this, or if we are looking at this in the future, we'll remember why we set up output class E. Okay, I'm going to save that. And the easiest thing to do here is just to shut down the system and start it back up again. And then Jez2 will use the new parameters that we put into that parameter file. So I'm going to go back to Hercules here. And to shut down TK4 minus, you type /s space shutdown. And that will start the shutdown job. So the first thing it's going to do is pause for 30 seconds, apparently. And then it will do all of its tasks to shut everything down. So through the magic of editing, I'm going to fast forward us to the future. I'll see you there. Okay, welcome to the future. So TK4 has shut down. If I look over at my C3270 session, you can see I was disconnected. So all we need to do now is just start TK4 back up. So I'll run the MVS command again. And I will go over to my TSO window here, and we will reconnect with our 3270 client. And then we'll just wait for VTAM to start up. So while we're waiting, if I look over at my virtual 1403 agent, take a look at its configuration file, you can see we still have our Hercules address set to localhost port 1403. So this 1403 corresponds to the port that we set the socket device to listen to in that Hercules configuration file, that 01 configuration file that we edited. I'm in online mode, and I have put in my access key for the free online 1403.bitnet.systems printer service. So this is all good. I should be able to run the agent. And sure enough, it connected to Hercules successfully. So let's see. Okay, so TK4 is started up enough for us to start using. So I'm going to log back in as Herc01. And I am going to enter my password. See you later. Great. So let's go over and look at the MVS console really quick. So TK4, again, to use the MVS console commands, you put a / and then Hercules will pass them through to TK4. If we do, I believe it's $du, this is a Jez2 command to display all of the units. And you can see here, we do have our new printer. So it knows about printer 4 at address 20E. And you can see it's drained. That's basically the stopped mode. So since this is a new printer, we do need to start it. So I'm going to do /$s for start. and then PRT4 for printer 4. Okay, so now printer 4 is no longer drained. It is now inactive, meaning it's not currently printing, but it's waiting for a job. So if you do $$du again, now it looks like all of the other printers. Now I suspect we're going to need to start it one more time, and you'll see why in a second. But let's go back over to TSO and find something we can run. Are there any... I actually don't know. Are we Herco 1? I don't know if there are any sample jobs. No, let's look in sys1.samplib. We don't really need a job that does anything. We just need a job that produces output, even if it's an error. Let's look at this COBOL sample. Does that work? Sure, why not? So what I'm going to do to send to my new output class, I need to say message class equals E. And that should send any sysout output to my new E output class. So let's submit this job and see what happens. Okay, it's submitted. Let's look back over at the MVS console via Hercules. And you can see here that MVS or JES2 is asking you to confirm that this printer has form 0001. This is basically what paper do you have loaded in it, and carriage control 6 or FCB form control buffer 6. Right, so if you set up a printer class, an output class in MVS in JES2, and you tell it, okay, this printer is for printing jobs that have, you know, this particular paper stock or this particular paper form, and it has this carriage control set up. The first time I print to it, JES2 is asking, hey, operator, do you really have this physical setup, this kind of paper and this kind of form control set up on printer 4? Because that's what I think, as the operating system, you've done, and I'm about to print a job to it. So we're happy with that. That's not particularly relevant in the emulated Hercules printer world. So again, I'm going to run /$s PRT4, and that is going to confirm, yes, I want to start jobs on this printer. Now, if we look at Virtual 1403, yeah, sure enough, we received data from Hercules, we printed it. So I'm going to switch back over to my web browser since we now have web delivery of the jobs available. If I refresh, we should see a fourth PDF. And there it is, job 1. Cobb samp. So that's our COBOL sample job that we just ran. And yeah, it's on output class E, as the separator page says here. I'm guessing there was just an error. Yeah, so it's just calling a COBOL procedure that isn't installed on the system. But we got what we wanted. We have output going to Virtual 1403 through output class E. So now all of your other TK4 output, everything going to printer 1 here, will keep going to the printer 1 file, and it's not going to send all of the startup and shutdown jobs and the MF1 jobs and all of your other job output up through the service and email you the jobs. You can just selectively print to class E. And in fact, now that we've really started the printer, if I submit this again, it should just go automatically. We're not going to have to keep saying start printer. Yeah, so it just printed, it's done. And if I look over here, I should see, if I refresh, a second copy. Yeah, so there's job 2. And it just all goes automatically now. So that is how you add a new output class. In this case, we called it E. We gave it a new device that we created in the Hercules configuration at address 20E. And then Virtual 1403 is just still pointed to that SockDev port that we created in Hercules. So I hope that was useful. If you are a MVS 3.8 user from the Moseley Sysgen, stick around and we will do the same thing over on that system. There are a couple of minor differences, but you'll recognize the overall procedure from what we just did on TK4-. If you're a TK4- user, there's no particular reason for you to stick around. So I will say goodbye And if you have any questions or problems or anything else to say about this, go ahead and leave those down in the comments below. And if you don't stick around for the rest of the video, we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Okay, now we're going to take a look at how to add our new output class for our virtual printer on the Moseley MVS system. So if you set your system up using Moseley's instructions, let's go over to the web browser here, his installing MVS 3.8, we can add our new 1403 printer. So let's, I already have the system up and running. So let's go ahead and make the changes to the JES2 config first. And then we will shut down the system, add the virtual printer to the Hercules configuration file, and bring everything back up. We can probably do this sort of live while the system is running, but it'll just be more straightforward and easy and probably fewer steps if we just accept that we're going to shut down the system and re-IPL it after we edit the Hercules config. So let me log on as HMVS01. This is just a new unmodified MVS 3.8 system built exactly following Moseley's instructions. So if you just built a system, it should be in this same state. We use RFE. And we will edit the sys1.parmlib. This is where the JES2 configuration member is. So let's go ahead and edit sys1.parmlib. And if we page down, we should see, yep, there, JES2 PM00. So there are safer ways to edit this file. You would typically create a new copy of this or a backup copy, whichever way you want to work, and then edit that. And you can provide an alternative startup file name to the JES2 start command. So you could start using your new file, make sure it works, and then once you're happy with it, you can make that your default startup file. We are going to live dangerously, and we're just going to edit the single parameter file that we have and hope it works. If you break this file and JES2 no longer starts up, I have another video, oops, I broke my mainframe, that shows how you can use a standalone editor, the ZZSA standalone editor, to get in, fix your files, and make your mainframe bootable again. But that's neither here nor there. We will hopefully not break our system. So if we look in this file, I'm going to go down one page, and I see number of printers is set to 3. I believe we currently only have 2 defined, so this max number of local printers, 3 should be okay because we're just going to be adding a third. But if you wanted to add multiple new output classes going to different new printer devices that you add, just remember to up this number to be high enough to contain however many printers you're adding. So let's page down again. And here we are, local printers. So you can see that we have 2 printers, printer 1 and printer 2. And this printer 1 is at unit 00E, and it is the class A output. And printer 2 is at 00F, and it's the class M output. We can see this is a 1403. This is just a comment. This isn't part of the printer definition. But when Jay set up these JES2 parameters, he dropped a comment here that this is the 1403 device. This is a 3211 device. For our purposes, it really doesn't matter which printer type we're using, but we'll stick with 1403 because we're calling this whole system virtual 1403. So may as well stick with somewhat authentic devices, right? So we can add another printer by just copying this printer 1 line. You can do a block copy by putting a CC on the beginning line you want to copy and a CC on the last line you want to copy. So in this case, it's just 2 lines. So we will have these 2 CCs right next to each other. And then I can say I want to paste these before this line. So that's the letter B. We need to rename this printer 3, so I'll just change that to a 3. And then really the only question in this whole process is what unit is our new printer going to live at? And this needs to be a device that has been generated into the system as an appropriate device type. So as a 1403 printer or as a 3211 printer. It needs to be a printer in the IO device map when we generated the system. So if I go back over to the installing MVS website on Jay's website, if you look at step 5, customizing your new MVS system, if we scroll down, he has kind of a graphical display of how the configuration file is set up. And you can look here, I'll zoom in a little bit. He has a PDF of a reference for all of the devices and device addresses generated. So that's what we need. That tells us what device slots essentially are available without having to do a new IO gen. And we see here that there are 1403 printers and 3211 printers. So if we look at the 1403, so 00E, that's the printer that we already have. So we're not going to touch that. That will still be a file output printer along with 00F. But then we also have additional printers defined at 1.5, 1E, and a 3211 at 1F. I like the look of this 01E device. This 1.5 device probably works fine as well, but I just see that into my eye. For some reason, that looks like it might be an alternate console printer or something like that. And in fact, that might be the MVS console log printer. So that device may not be available. So I'm going to use 01E, and that's where I'm going to attach my new printer. So with that knowledge, we can now say, yes, this printer 3 is going to be at 01E, and it's going to be class, and we can make up the output class we want. I'm going to use class E for email, because the virtual 1403 web service can email me the print jobs that go to this output class. And I'll leave everything else alone. I'm sure the defaults for printer 1 are appropriate for printer 3, and it is indeed still a 1403 printer. Okay, so that's all we did. We just copied the 2 lines for printer 1. We pasted them down here. Make sure this continuation character is in the last column, which again, if you just copy and paste using the built-in copy and then B to put it before this line commands, that'll all be correct. So printer 3, unit 01E, class E. So now let's go down a couple more pages. Here we go. And so here is where we define our output classes. And so we made a printer that's defaulting to accepting output from class E, but we don't have an output class E yet. And this is also where you can see which output class letters are already in use. So if you picked output class Y, you'd probably want to pick a different output class. So I used output class E. So I'm going to copy output class A, and I'm going to put it before L just to keep these all in alphabetical order here. Change that to an E, and the comment, I'll say this is my virtual 1403 output class. So here's where you can see you have your punch output class is B. We have a syslog output class. One's been designated for documentation. This really has to do with priority and some of the rules and of course, which device then they actually go to. We have our held output class. We have a dummy output class. So if you didn't know all these output classes were on your Moseley system, you can take a look at them and try them out, see what they do. But we're only interested in adding this new E output class. And that should be everything. If we save that, let's go ahead and exit out of all of this and shut our system down. So I'll log off TSO. I'm going to switch back over to the MVS console here, and we'll just do a regular shutdown process. We'll stop TSO. We will shut down VTAM, so znet, quick. All available functions complete. JES2 shuts down more quickly if you stop all the initiators first. So I'll stop all of the initiators, and then I'll shut down stop JES2. And that should tell us that JES2 termination is complete. And there it is. Now we can do our Z EOD. No dollar on that, just Z EOD. There we go. And then QuiS. Okay. Over to Hercules now. I'm going to exit Hercules, and I'm going to edit the configuration file for Hercules. So I am using, again, this is just a default Moseley Sysgen, so I'm using the default file in the conf directory called MVS.cnf. And if we go down, we should see where the existing printers are defined. Yep, right here. So you can see this printer 00E is here. And then we have printer 00F. And again, I suspect, let me just confirm while we're here. Yeah, okay. So that MVS log, so a hard copy of the master console is going to device 15. So there is already a 1403 device at address 15 that's in use by the system, not by JES2, but by MVS itself. So it's a good thing that we picked that 1E device because 1.5 is already taken. So these don't need to be in order, but I'm going to keep them in order. I'm just going to add a new device line to the Hercules configuration file here at address 1E. It's going to be a 1403 printer, and this needs to be the socket device. So I'm going to listen on port 1403, and we're going to make this socdev. And we can call that, just for the comment here, this is going to be our virtual 1403 class E output. If you want to restrict it to only listen for connections on localhost, you can say localhost : the port number. But if you just put a port number here, this will listen on all interfaces on port 1403. This number can be whatever you want. This is just the network port number. It has nothing to do with the fact that it's a 1403 device. But I like to use port 1403 because that makes sense to me that if I only have one 1403 device that's listening on the network, I'm just going to use port 1403. So we will save that file, and we can start Hercules back up using that configuration file. If I hit escape here to get to the semi-graphical view here in Hercules, you can see that at address 1E, we do in fact have a 1403 printer, socdev listening on port 1403. So let's reconnect our MVS console, reconnect our TSO 3270 client, and back in Hercules, we will IPL the system. So IPL 150, no system parameters, R0U. And I don't think we need to reformat the JES2 spools or anything. We can just say R1 no rec. Hit F12 to set the console in scrolling mode. And MVS is IPL'd. We can start VTAM, which will also start TSO. And now let's look while we're here at all of the units in JES2. And you can see here that we have our two existing printers. Our new printer is drained. It's never been started before. So we can start PRT 3. Okay, 01E allocated printer 3. Printer 3 is now inactive like the other ones, and it is sitting on class E. So $DU again, and we can see that, okay, printer 3 at address 1E is inactive. So it's just waiting for output jobs now. Now I'm going to go over to the virtual 1403 agent. So this is just a Linux shell prompt. I downloaded the virtual 1403 agent, links from the virtual 1403 website. And if we look at the configuration for this, you can see that the Hercules address is set to localhost port 1403. So that matches the port 1403 that we configured for our printer. That's good. We're in online mode. And then I've already pasted in the access key that I've created for the purposes of this video so that we can authenticate with the virtual 1403 service. So that file looks good. We will start virtual 1403, and you can see that it has successfully connected to Hercules on localhost port 1403. Okay, so moment of truth. Let's go over to TSO and log on as my HMVS 01 user. We'll go into the review front end, and I will edit. I have a little COBOL Hello World job at HMVS 01. This is actually just the job that Jay Moseley has you create to sort of teach you how to use the editor and verify the installation of everything. So if I look at this job, this is just the JCL that runs the actual COBOL code in this source hello member. You can see here that currently it's at message class X. So that's going to go to the held output queue on the system. I want to change that to E to use my new output class that should go to my new SockDev printer and feed through to virtual 1403. So I'll just change my message class to E. And now if I submit this job, it will submit it. It'll go to class E. You can see we got a bell on the MVS console. The first time I print to this printer, it's wanting me to confirm that this printer physically has the standard one form and FCB6 is the right configuration, the form control buffer. This is selecting FCB6. So that's all fine. We'll assume that's the type of paper and everything and how the printer's configured. So all you need to do is just start printer 3 again. And that's $S PTR3 to tell it to go ahead and, yes, use that configuration for that printer. Did I mistype that? $S, I did. PRT3, not PTR3. Okay, so printer, the job ran. The printer is now inactive again, and the job hello is purged. So if I look over at virtual 1403, sure enough, it received a job and it printed it using the online print API. So let's just go over and check that out. I'm logged into my account here. Let me refresh this. And yep, now job 13 just showed up. So if I look at that PDF, if we go down to the last page, we should see, or the last page before the separator page, we see the output from our COBOL program that says, hello world. Okay, so now your class A output will just continue to go to the class A output file on disk that Hercules is hooked up to. And you can use your new class E output just for the jobs that you want to route through virtual 1403. And if we just do that again, I just want to confirm that we don't have to confirm the printer, paper, and carriage setup and everything again. Let's just submit that one more time. And sure enough, this time it just went ahead and ran the job, printed it, output to that printer. So if I go over to the web browser and refresh, there's job 14. So no more manual intervention on the MVS console required. Just be aware the first time after you start that printer, you do need to start it one more time to confirm just the physical printer setup. So that's it. Hopefully that's helpful. You can create your own new output class so that instead of having to choose between all or none of your jobs going to virtual 1403, you can just set the message class in whatever jobs you want to selectively print out to the virtual 1403 service. And with that, thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments below. Also, if you're over on the mainframe community Discord, I am there. There's a virtual 1403 channel there if you want to discuss virtual 1403. But until next time, we'll see you later.